Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Mr. Kleinschmidt. Fabian, thank you for joining me, man. I know you're busy and I pulled you away from work. So what the hell is going on in Germany, man?
A lot is going on.
Well, you got Merz, who's, going to send missiles, and he's not going to send missiles. He's going to let them build them, and he's not. And Russia is saying, don't do that. And Merz is kind of waffling on the Iran thing. Also, what's happening? What do you think's on the ground happening?
Well, my estimate is that after Merz left Washington, D.C., he did have a meeting, and we talked about this on our Euro Bytes show, that he was meeting up with a lot of the neocons in the United States Senate. First and foremost, Lindsey Graham. And Merz has been very vocal when it comes to Russia. And right now at the G7 summit, he just bluntly said, the Israelis are doing our dirty work. They're doing the dirty work for the West, which has caused a big backlash among the media here in Germany. However, you can see in the fine lining that those are his initial positions.
Yeah,
he seems to be, and this is my guess. He seems to be very well linked to a lot of the neocons in Washington, and he seems to buy their playbook. With regard to the missiles, Putin, interestingly, today I read in the news that Putin wants to talk to Merz, and Putin threatened that, again, if you deliver Taurus, that will be a serious mistake, and Germany would be a party in the war. I think that Merz personally is gambling very high, and what Putin is doing at the same time is Putin knows right now his back is against the wall. If the Iranians fall, which they will, this is a matter of weeks.
I agree.
The Chinese and the Russians have their backs against the wall, and the next stop, if Tehran falls, the next stop is Russia, and Putin knows that. So he refused to talk with Scholz. He refused to talk with the Europeans, and now he noticed that his back is against the wall. And so his first address, which is usual for the Russians, if they cannot talk to the Americans, their first approach will always be to go to Berlin. And Merz has been gambling high. Merz has been doing a lot of, I mean, if you saw his interview on Fox News, he's been talking very Reaganite, peace through strength. If you're weak, you invite aggression, et cetera, et cetera. But so my guess is that Merz is gambling very high, and he has an interest in upholding the Ukrainian war.
Is that what he's gambling for, to keep the war going? Or what is the gamble?
So.
Okay.
I think he's gambling to keep the war going in order to first and foremost build the new German war machine, the European war machine. At the same time, it's to weaken the Russians as much as possible. Remember, I think there's U.S. interests and there's European interests in I don't want to say pro-West Russia, but a neutral Russia that has a lot of natural resources. And I think they want to grind the Russians to the weakest position as possible, that they know that either the Russian elites will get rid of Putin or the state will completely collapse. That is in my view, the strategy that they're running. I don't know how coordinated this is with Trump. I don't know how coordinated this is with the Israelis, but I do know that what we're witnessing is that Merz is clearly online with the neocon policy in Washington.
That's really, really interesting, because you're right. There's bigger geopolitical issues here with Iran. There's energy. There's the Silk Road out of China. all the geopolitics. I frankly think the best outcome with Russia would be to make a deal with them economically and let's do business. And I hope Trump does that, because I don't think you're going to weaken Russia till Putin falls. I just don't think that's an option unless you start a nuclear war. So
well, and that's on the table. So
Yeah.
the question is, how is he going to, if he talks with Putin, first of all, are they going to meet in person? If that's the case, where? Switzerland? I doubt it. I was thinking they might meet in Azerbaijan, or is it just going to be a regular phone call? But if they talk, Merz most likely will uphold the maximum positions. You give back Crimea, you give back the Donbass, you give back the eastern provinces, which Putin is not going to do. But I think he will keep a door open for further negotiations, as you said, trade, because there is a absolutely highly interest of the German industry and the economy that the gate to Russia will be open. It's the natural resources, it's
right?
the open markets.
Yeah.
And same with the let's if the mullah regime will fall, the country will most likely. I mean, my personal opinion is that the Israelis have been setting up the Shah's son to basically take over Persia, which it will most likely be called at that point. And as you said, this would be huge geostrategically, because number one, you're opening up a market that used to exist back in the 70s. I mean, Iran was always a hotbed. The CIA did a coup in the 50s, and the 79 revolution was a massive sting to the West, because the Israelis were on peace terms but with the Persians, et cetera, et cetera. So the German interest is clearly that the mullah regime falls. That's why he's so vocal of what the Israelis are doing, Merz. But he's at the same time very hawkish when it comes to Ukraine, to uphold the war, to grind down Russia, and to stall them, because that's what the Europeans want. The Europeans want the Russians tied down in Ukraine. That's their objective goal.
Does Merz care about Germany and its industry?
Yes.
Interesting.
Does.
So does he want the gas turned back on?
That's a really good point. And those are one of the questions that I have, is if he has back talks with Trump, does he have the Nord Stream 2, if you will, Trump card in his back? Because that would be a really interesting move on the part of Merz, to see if he's going to have maximal positions on Russia, but at the same time keeping the door open to say, well, we could reinstall a pipeline on different conditions, on different terms. But yes, he is very much pro German industry.
Interesting, because I see that you're starting nuclear power back up again, right? In certain areas.
Yeah.
That's a big one, because your industry is suffering and your power supplies are not not dependable at this point.
Right.
But I'm still just wondering what I know that they want to weaken Russia, but I don't see that as a possibility. And I wonder where this is going with the because this is a big overall thing. You're right. Everybody's going after the resources. This is what all this is about. And how does that needle get threaded, with the Russian? I see what's going to go on in Iran. I think you're right. I think the regime will fall and be replaced. It's possibly going to be with, as you said, the monarchists, which I don't think the people want again. I think the people want a democracy, and in a new Shah is not that. So you may have a civil war in Iran if that happens.
That's a possibility. I mean, the Israelis have been building up Reza Pahlavi now for years. I've followed this whole social media campaign that the Israelis have been driving. I mean, Pahlavi was at the he was at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, putting out statements like, we have a biblical connection. His new son-in-law is I think Israeli as well. He lives in Virginia. He's been very outspoken. And the whole, I mean, if you look at even the name of the whole operation, what it's called, Rising Lion or Rising Sun and Lion, I mean, that's the symbol of the old flag of Persia. So there's that whole biblical narrative that, we have this Cyrus connection with Persia, etc. I mean, this is not a war against the Persian people. This is not a war against, there's no strategic objective or operative objective to destroy Iran. It's to destroy the regime, their capabilities. And this is not Iraq, 2.0. You're not gonna topple a regime and install some kind of a fake remnant that has absolutely no power. I don't see that happening. I think they learned from that. But the question with the civil war is, in my opinion, more, how many Shiite fractions are left that would rise up and rebel? Because I've met so many Persians. And I've never met a supporter of this regime. I've met so many people that they're agnostic, they're atheists, they're Christians. They hate this regime.
I agree.
And I, back in a couple of years ago, when I was in the streets of Hamburg, protesting against anti-Semitism, having an Israeli flag in the middle of the streets of Hamburg, we would do this together with Persians who had the old Persian flags, and they were all supporters of Reza Pahlavi. And he is in favor of a constitutional monarchy. So democracy would be implemented, but this is the guy the Israelis are pointing towards. So that's my biggest guess what would happen.
That's really good insight. What about Germany and the U.S.? How do you see that relationship going?
I personally I've been very positively surprised. I mean, Merz, if you look at the guy, when he was asked a couple of years ago who is his favorite political leader, he did not mention a German leader. He said the person that had the most influence on him was Ronald Reagan. If you listen to his statement in the Oval Office, he said, "Look, I was here in 1982 when Reagan was president." He has a very Reaganite view of the world. He's very pro-American. He led a transatlantic organization called the Atlantikbrücke, the Atlantic Bridge. But again, this is all at sort of the elitist level. And I think the connections that he had to the United States, of course, were the BlackRock, the East Coast elites, and the neocons. I mean, he is friends with a lot of Republicans, but it's the neocon elites. However, my view is that, number one, Trump hasn't said anything negative. They seem to have a pretty good start.
Yeah.
Their relationship is going well, and if the Russians now go to the Germans on the bargaining table, this of course is going to increase again Germany's strategic position with the United States. The question, I think, and this is the more fascinating part, is if Trump can work together with Merz to perhaps build and implement a strategy that will solve this Russia crisis. Why do I think that is a possibility? Because in the end, both are interested in peace, but I think Merz wants it way later than Trump.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
But I think both are interested in having the resources that the Russians have. So the United States and Germany could, in the years to come, build or repair the relationship that was destroyed, under the Merkel and Scholz years. And again, Merz too, this is probably something interesting for your viewers too. He was Angela Merkel's arch nemesis. I mean, she bid him away. She prevented him. She hated him. She didn't like this idea of a guy, who worked in the private sector to come back, who has pro-capitalist views, et cetera, et cetera. His political tactical decisions in the past couple of years have been a little, I would say, unfortunate. And he has been very, I think what he tried to do in the past years was to please the, liberal global establishment in Germany, go into a coalition with the Social Democrats, do everything in his power to keep the AfD away from him so that he can come into power. But we do know too that some leaders evolve in their time, and the future of Europe is not left. If we're seeing election results in Poland, we're seeing, if you follow CPAC Europe, if you follow what's happening in France, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, Europe's future is on the right. And eventually this will happen in Germany. And those are his biggest questions of his chancellorship. How is he going to deal with the AfD? And is he going to get conscription through to build a strong army, to build Europe's biggest conventional military, to be an anchor in Europe? I think those are the key questions that will define his term as chancellor.
Do you think Germany will rebuild into a strong military force?
Yes, but it depends on how the war with Russia plays out. Because if the German ball is rolling, the machine is starting to roll. I'm witnessing this personally. I do think if the Germans are, headstrong in an issue, and the whole industry is now shifting towards building a big armament factory, if you will, implementing new technology, drones, etc., space, all of that. If Germany has enough time, it will build a very conventionally powerful army, but it will have to face the tough questions like, is it going to go nuclear? Is it going to allow itself to go nuclear? How is it going to deal with Poland? You have to remember, Poland said, we want to be Europe's biggest conventional army. Yes. So there's that possibility of a rivalry with Poland. Those are all the inner European conflicts that could arise. So those are the key issues to balance out. But yes, if it has 6 to 8 years, it can build a very powerful military. If it was only 3 years, no way.
Interesting. Well, is France still a rival in Europe or not?
No.
Okay. And that's
France is a diplomatic. France sees itself as a diplomatic anchor, but look at the facts. Who does Putin now want to talk to? He doesn't want to talk to Andrzej Duda in Poland. He doesn't want to talk to Macron. He doesn't want to talk to Meloni. He certainly doesn't want to talk to Keir Starmer. He wants to talk to Merz. So I think those are the facts that then speak for themselves. The French have capabilities. The French have strategic advantages in some parts. But the French, in the end, are not able to do it on their own.
That's really interesting. You enlightened me there. So what about AfD? Is that going to be banned, or are they going to continue to rise in power?
Well, the AfD is going to, in the upcoming years, win elections in the eastern German states, and they're going to implement state governments. And they're going to shift the Overton window towards the right. The AfD will face internal civil war because you have an AfD that has very, 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 I would almost say when it comes to foreign policy, quite ambiguities. And you have you have Alice Weidel, she did the whole Elon Musk podcast, I'm pro-West, I'm pro-Israel, but we need to talk to Russia, etc. But you also have a fraction within the AfD that is very open to the CCP, that is very open to the mullahs. Why do they do that? Because in their view, and this is, of course, the result of the Obama-Biden years, this AfD fraction looked for new allies in their struggle against globalist wokeism. And let's be frank too, certainly because of their Eastern German background, will always have a closer tie to Russia than to the West. So the question will be with the AfD, will they be a conservative force in Germany, or will they be a disruptive force in Germany? Right now they're a balance. They're a disruptive conservative force, constructive, actually libertarian force. But the key question with the AfD is, how will it position itself? But it will become a powerful anchor, and it will take over power in states. And it's a matter of, as I said, we should start counting by the year 2029 to see them rise to the ranks of power on the federal level.
That's really interesting. So the show is Euro Bytes. We do it about once a week. Sometimes we skip a week or so, but you can find it on CDM, and we stream it on all our platforms. But what do you see the show focusing on going forward? Is there any big issues you want to tackle with the team?
Well, I think what we really need to tackle is especially what we just covered. What could a renewed U.S.-German relationship look like? What are the strategies that need to be or should be implemented? What would perhaps a peaceful Iran mean when it comes to things like migration? I mean, would that pressure of because you have to remember a lot of that migration that we're witnessing from Syria and Afghanistan and all that. I mean, this is a form of proxy warfare. This is hybrid warfare against the West, with Hezbollah, for example, not having any power. And this for the American viewers too. I mean, Hezbollah is in Mexico. So these proxy terrorist armies control migration. And so one of the things that we should really focus on, because migration is one of our heavy topics, is what could a destroyed mullah regime mean when it comes to things like migration. So those are the heavy issues. And of course, I still think Israel is a big topic. And we need to talk about that going forth, because those are the key issues that we're now facing.
Well, you brought up something that I'm glad you did, but immigration in Europe. I mean, even if Germany gets its act together, you still got to deal with that problem. How's that going to go down? I mean, you're having knife fights or knife attacks and drive-through attacks almost weekly in Germany. So how do you deal with that? I mean, are you going to deport them or not? I mean, if you don't, then what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, and here we can circle back to use that term, circle back to the AfD. I mean, the AfD, on their political agenda, wants massive deportations. The government right now, and to their credit, they have closed the borders. We now actually do have border controls for the first time. And surprise, surprise, the people that are applying for asylum in Germany drastically goes down. And summer is the time where usually migration spikes. This is especially then always the case in late August, early September, where it's still warm but not as hot. And the numbers have gone down. But what is happening right now is still not enough. They're going to have to double down even more. And they're going to have to double down on the borders. They're going to have to, I mean, migration is an issue that has to be solved, in essence, militarily. You have to fight it at its base. You have to fight it at your outer borders. You have to fight it in the Mediterranean. You have to fight it in Africa. But you also have to do one thing, and this is again a good opportunity. You have to fight, those regimes that promote migration. And you have to, if Syria is a safe country, the German government has to say to the Syrians, it's now time to go home. If Iran is a safe country, the Iranians, it's time to go home. If Afghanistan, well, the Taliban rules there, but even when it comes to Afghanistan, you have to tell those people you cannot immigrate to Germany anymore. And those that are illegally there are going to have to be deported. And that pressure on the German government is rising continually, because we still see, as you said, knifings, cars driving into massive groups. The Germany that I knew only 10 years ago does not exist anymore. We cannot sit in a beer garden and enjoy, in a summer, a soccer tournament or what have you, out of fear that, some idiot's going to run a car into us and say Allahu Akbar, or a knife, as you said. That public perception of safety has been completely eroded. And that is the result of Angela Merkel's failed migration policy.
Fabian, thank you so much, man. Everyone check out Euro Bytes. It's on podcast. You were stream it all over the network. So a fantastic show. And that's a great team that it's always a fun show. Just put it that way. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Fabian. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Todd. Bye-bye.